And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of BeyondQuality Community Podcast, where I, Vitaly Sharalatov, a developer advocate and case, and Anupam.
Uh, Hello, folks. This is Anupam Krishnamurthy. I am a freelance test solution or test automation architect.
Maria.
Hi, Maria here. I'm working as a test consultant, quality engineering leader at a company called Regent, and I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden.
And we welcome you, Mesut, on our podcast. Tell us something about yourself.
Of course, my name is Mesut and I'm Turkish, but now I'm a little bit far away. I'm based in Tokyo, Japan. I'm not exactly Tokyo, but close, somewhere called Yokohama. So yeah, this is where I'm joining from. It's almost the end of day for me. I think it should be morning for you, I guess. But we have a huge time difference.
Yeah, and that's what I love about online communities, that people from all over the world can be collaborating in one place. I would briefly want to say a few words about the community. So BeyondQuality is a collaborative community where we invite everyone and anyone to participate, initiate research or experimentation or any type of collaborative project where inputs from other people, other experts, is valuable for you. For instance, Anupam is running a very interesting experiment about testing RAG, retrieval augmented generation for LLMs. And Maria is running a beautiful research on how to prepare for public talks and why to prepare for public talks and why give them. I run a few researches too. And Mesut joined recently with his beautiful research on testing culture in various countries. Can you tell us more, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm not sure if we can call it testing culture, but maybe the effect of cultures on testing habits or the testing approaches. And I mean, even for that, I'm not sure if we can properly name, because what I mean is, I ask people for explaining their maybe experiences or different ways to communicate to different people with different backgrounds. But I think eventually we will figure out that it is not only the testing, but the whole effect of cultures on the working style. Even if it is testing or development or anything else, it is like a whole set of the effects of culture on working styles. Because I believe testing is testing. Like, how can you test a product? It will be more or less the same. I mean, you can use different technical tools or pipelines that might differ, but the way you test or the approach you will follow would be more or less same. But the big difference will, I guess, lie under the communication or the way to build a communication with people from different backgrounds. So this was the initial idea to figure out what kind of differences we can encounter while working with different people, because we all from different backgrounds and we are all in different places and working in international environments. I think this is the norm of working styles nowadays. And most of the time, as we discussed briefly in the beginning, we are working with different people in different time zones from different ages on the world. So, what kind of experiences we can encounter, or uh, can there be any surprises that we cannot foresee? This was the main initiative that I wanted to start.
I think this is extremely interesting because myself, also having international background and uh, having moved from Belarus to Sweden and experiencing this difference in how people work, the environment, the culture, the the vibes in the office.
Yes.
They're all completely different, even though it's within Europe. So I didn't move that far. And still, it was a significant difference for me because these two countries, they come from completely different backgrounds, completely different history. And all this history, it affects how we communicate, how our bosses communicate, how the whole team communicates. Because when you're at work, you kind of replicate the communication styles you have outside of work, right?
Yes.
And I'm super interested to hear more about what kind of responses did you get, and what is the geography of the responses, and what's the most interesting thing you realized after doing your research?
Yeah, I can say I'm still in the early phases of this study because I'm still collecting some responses. And I did not fully analyze all of them because I believe eventually there will be a huge data that we can analyze and try to figure out some insights. But of course, so far I had some insights already, some interesting facts or things that people share. The geography is almost everywhere. Like so far, I didn't have any response from South America, I guess, and nothing from Africa. But other than that, almost everywhere: Asia, Europe, Middle East, North America. So yeah, almost everywhere. And yeah, as I expected, there are huge. Sometimes there are huge differences. Sometimes similarities. Even if, as you told Maria, sometimes location does not matter that much. Even if it is close, it might be very different. Even if it is super far away, it may be very similar. We can discuss in detail, but I got the feedback of Anupam. I guess it was 1 or 2 days ago. So he put some feedback from Germany, and I'm living in Japan, and I found lots of similarities because I believe there is a reason for that. Because those two countries are automotive dominant industries. Like there are huge brands dominating the whole industry. I think they are shaping the quality assurance approaches. This might be one reason. Or like depending on other cultural aspects, like sometimes South America and Mediterranean countries are having some similarities, like the communication styles, how strict or how loose they are against different practices. And especially from the country where I'm from Turkey, it's like a mixture of everything. So you can find something similar to Mediterranean countries, something similar to Asia, something similar to Europe. So from most of the responses, I find something in it from my perspective. So that was also very interesting, like finding something similar that you are facing from different people. So in this way, you can see that it is not a surprise; it is normal to have some different experiences, and this is the norm of working with different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, why I find this study fascinating is let's just take the four people on this call.
Mhm.
All of us have countries of origin that are different from the countries in which we predominantly operate. And this is not something that we designed, it just happened by random. And I'm guessing that this is rather the norm than the exception for so many working professionals today. So, which is why in 2025, this research is far more relevant than even 1995, right? And I think, as you said, Mesut, broadly, we are looking at how different cultures impact the work context. And the work context, and I think context is far more important for testing than for different fields because quality has a huge bearing on the context in which we are operating. Two cultures can perceive quality very differently. And like you said, it is not a very easy extrapolation from geographical distance. I find Indian work culture to be far closer to American work culture than German work culture, although, geographically, this is further apart. And the same applies to Germany and Japan, as opposed to, say, Japan and India, for example. And all of this has, you can draw parallels from history to explain this. And in India's case, a lot of the outsourcing happened from American companies. So corporate culture from America has a huge influence on Indian work culture, and so on. And what I find particularly fascinating about your research is that you're taking this broad and influence of culture at a meta level on work experience, and you're translating that to testing, right? So I'd love for your thoughts on how you propose to, take this broad insight and narrow it down to the domain of testing.
This was an important point. Thanks for raising this, especially for testing, since we are communicating with a lot of parties. Like sometimes as a tester, you have to talk to the product teams, product owner, manager. You have to talk to developers. You have to talk to other testers. So you have to talk to a lot of people. And especially in terms of the time limitations or the stress of the limited time, the testing teams or the QA teams are under the biggest stress, right? Because most of the time they are at the very end of the development cycle. And when we are very close to the release times, then everybody asking QA, are you finished? Are you done? Are there anything else that we have to complete? So when you are waiting for responses, then you can have an idea about what you can expect. Like sometimes, for example, in Japan, this is what I experienced so far. In my experience, something which might take little time, which might be quite fast, might be taking too longer than I expected. Because here the process management is very important. Like somewhere else, you can concentrate on the outcome or just the delivery, right? Let's do it somehow. Let's forget about detailed test plans or the procedures. Just do it. Just see the result, outcome, and make a decision to go or not. But no, this is not the case here. I believe somewhere else too, maybe in Germany as well. You have to follow the procedure. You don't have, or you shouldn't follow any ad hoc approach. What is designed in advance should be followed properly. That was the experience I had here so far.
This is really, really interesting. What you've said, your old folks said, I find extremely important. Someone said that culture eats strategy. And I would say that ethics and history and culture and the culture of the hierarchy itself will influence the process so much. As you, Mesut, said, that people follow the standard process they agreed upon. And it is very important for them to follow this process. When I read Deming, how he made Toyota prosperous company, he had to formulate all these processes, even Kaizen, the process of continuous learning and continuous improvement, he had to formulate. And to me, this is my guess, this is my hypothesis, that it is so important for certain cultures to formulate processes not to be blamed because the authority and the hierarchy is so strict. This reminds me of Russian culture as well. I remember my granddad, he was a worker at a manufacturing plant, and he said that they had everything in writing, all the rules, all the processes, so that if something happens, they are not to be blamed. And this might work well for certain industries, like automotive industry, where you can set the process once a year, implement it, and work with this process. But in agile environment, in proper agile environment, this would be a bottleneck. But then again, if you are too agile, maybe you're making too many mistakes. Maybe you're moving too fast. Maybe you're failing users too much. So this is really, really interesting. When people open offices in various places, they often neglect the cultural differences, and then they expect the workers to be matching their culture. Like I live in France now, and to me, it is still so strange to see people leaving at 5. And they just close the laptop and they just leave, and they give zero. They don't care, let's say, about what's happening at work after 5. I've been working 12 hours a day for so many years now. And it's not just because I'm forced to or whatever. It's just because I find so much work to be done. And all the Americans who work with French people, they just hate them because of the culture mismatch. This is really, really interesting. I think people should be educated that cultures differ and that you shouldn't expect someone to be changing straight away to match your culture, but you should be more open to understanding why the person behaves this way. So yeah, I think your research can be a good educational material for managers in particular to see that it's not this Ivan, Maria, Vitaly, Anupam, or whoever who is bad or good, but it is that they live and operate within a certain culture. So how many responses have you got?
I agree. I don't know the exact count, but around 20, I guess, from different locations. And I did not really start making public queries. I'm just doing some direct reach outs to the people I know from different places. Uh, I hope it will grow in time when I start public queries. But I want to say something about what you just told. I think it was an important point related to hierarchy. That is really what's happening here in Japan. Like the societies, maybe some other Asian cultures are similar, but yeah, there's a strong hierarchy here, and it might not be only blaming, but this is an habit which is settled down in the people's mentalities or the mindsets over not a short time, over years and years, like starting from maybe 18th centuries. Because, as you told, Toyota was one of the locomotive companies or brands for the quality assurance approaches, and their approaches are still being followed by lots of different brands or organizations. But maybe there is a interesting point over there we might be careful about. Like those quality approaches might be applicable for certain domains, but not for others. Like I believe these approaches are perfect for manufacturing or developing hardware. But are they the best for developing software? I think this might be arguable, I would say, because I believe this is hindering uh, maybe applying agile approaches. I mean, of course, we don't have to apply agile. That's not a must. But we know that that's more practical, at least compared to waterfall processes. But if we try to follow those quality approaches, which were perfectly applicable on manufacturing or developing hardware, on the software in the exactly same way, that might hinder us from uh, practicing the best experiences, I guess. What do you think? Maybe Anupam, this might be a similar approach in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, I can resonate a lot with how, like there's these differences between, or rather, I think one of the points I stated in my input is how I am surprised to find that the perception of quality in Germany is different when it comes to hardware and automotive goods vis-a-vis software. And I find that Germans are far more particular about quality when it comes to, say, automotive or manufactured goods versus software. I mean, I think they are a little more tolerant of bad software quality. And and probably that is an outcome of just being jaded with the bad software that is created due to um, using quality practices that are not suited to the software context. And therefore, like the expectations have drifted so far that, there are different standards applied to quality in these two categories of goods.
Yeah, but I think when we come to evaluating those feedbacks, I think we have to be a little bit careful because it might not only be the culture, but also the organizations or the type of the structures. Like we discussed with you, Anupam, this as well. Like if people are working in startups or maybe major organizations, there might be huge differences. It's not only the culture, but their structure or the organization, or even the industry or domain. For example, I worked for different products. Sometimes the first project I was involved, the big project, was a satellite development. So as you said, there were some requirement documents hundreds of pages. But in some other software development projects, you don't have any documentation at all. So it depends on not only the culture, but lots of different aspects. So if we try to examine the effects of culture, we have to make this distinction.
Yeah, and one thing I also noticed is that what often matters also is the origin of the company. So what the same company in different countries may have a lot in common, and like Volkswagen in Germany and Volkswagen in, I don't know, other countries, they have a lot of process in common, and they work almost the same way as if they all were in Germany, and it applies to different countries, and companies as well. So that people kind of take on these cultural patterns and kind of adjust to the working culture. And that's also interesting because it could feel like you're working in a different country even though you didn't move.
I agree. I agree. I have a similar situation right now. For example, the company I'm working for is originally an American company. So it is not similar to traditional Japanese companies at all. I have a completely different experience from my friends working for traditional Japanese companies. So as you told, even though it is in Japan, the origin matters more, I guess. I agree on
What's interesting here is that I think we mentioned, but not mentioned, we approached one problem from different angles. It's where managers bring certain practices to companies, not properly thinking through if these practices match the company culture, the company size, the company domain, and the company country where the office is opened. Like I've seen so many times where people, CTOs, especially immature CTOs, bring to little startups processes like grading of engineers or processes of performance reviews. The startup is like 10 people and they copy this huge process from Google or any other army size company where you have hundreds of thousands of people and some order must be brought to this chaos, otherwise the whole company will just collapse. And what I think is very important in what I do, what Maria does, what you do, what Anupam does, is that we try to bring some at least hint that there is some human side, cultural side in how you build your processes. Because I'm sure, Mesut, that with stricter hierarchies, historically based stricter hierarchies, the processes should be different. If you want to move faster, you need to allow people to fail sometimes and not feel as if they have to commit seppuku. I'm sorry. This is not something you want to have, right? You want to have people who want to fail sometimes, to have some fail budget. And how to introduce that? You can't just say, oh, dear people, you can fail, it's all right. You can't just say we have a failure budget or a bug budget or a downtime budget. People will not commit to that because they haven't grown to accept this new culture. Then again, it's interesting that so many companies want to instill certain culture, but they have turnover of like 10% per year. So 10% of the whole company leaves within each year. How are you supposed to have a culture growing in people if you have people leaving so much? While what I've read about Japan is that people do stay in companies for a long period of time. So you can help them adopt to your culture that you're trying to instill. So yeah, my idea is that it's really cool to share knowledge on the cultural differences, on the historical differences, on the mentality difference, if there is some mentality difference, so that managers can think better, can at least learn where to read about certain things, so that when they introduce practices, they introduce them in a more conscientious way.
exactly. Yes. Like as you told in your previous comment as well, why are we doing this study? Because trying to get some insights about what we can encounter or how we should approach in different circumstances, right? Under different circumstances. Sometimes we can derive some action items. Like if we realize that something is not working, then we can take some action items. But sometimes we don't have to. Like this is the way that it goes. right? Maybe we should just embrace how it is. Like if we are not getting responses in the time that we expect, then maybe we cannot change it. This is how it should be. Because if you are working with different environments or with lots of people with different backgrounds, so you cannot control everything. So just be prepared for different cases you can encounter and just embrace. Because otherwise, if you try to change everything as you told previously, that would not be possible. And yes, regarding the Japanese approach, yeah, lifetime employment is very common here. Like people start somewhere and they don't think about going anywhere else. This is the expectation from the companies as well because they make huge investments on the people they hire. They hire people, students, even before graduation. And when they start working for the companies, maybe 1 year, 2 years, they make huge investments like giving trainings, sending customer sites. And then after these people get enough experience, then the expectation is serving to the company for a long time. This is the norm. Yeah, there are quite differences from the Western world in Japan, especially.
And I'm guessing, like, one listening to this, I mean, I'm reading the research and looking at the implications here. I'm trying to flip this around. Like, what does this mean for individuals who are in different work cultures? And here I can speak to my experience as an expat, having to move to a different country, a different language, and a different culture. There are certainly challenges involved with that, but one of the biggest advantages is that I can I just have a better intuition for how different cultures work differently, and therefore I'm able to operate with this intuition more effectively at my workplace, right? I mean, I guess that's one of the benefits of bringing more diversity into your team. And I just wanted to ask you if this also parallels with your experience, and I think that is something that we can all take away from your research as well.
Sorry, can you repeat the part that you were
the the, my question concretely is, like, being expats who have experienced different culture, like being an expat yourself, like, and you've moved around a lot in the world, has that helped you adapt to new cultures better, understand cultural context more easily,
I
and
see.
therefore be more effective?
I see, definitely. Like you are becoming more adaptable. I think I read this adaptability keyword. I would say this is a keyword because I saw this in different responses from different people, like from similar backgrounds. Like when you are working in maybe limited resources, you have to develop some smart approaches, smart solutions, because this is what you have to do. Otherwise, you will not cope with all the challenges. You have very limited resources in terms of maybe the head count or even the time. This grows your adaptability, even against difficult circumstances. And when it comes to coping with or maybe communicating with different profiles, of course, the more you see, the more you grow your soft skills. Because again, as a tester, it's not only the technical skills, but also the soft skills, right? You have to be able to communicate properly with lots of different profiles. When I come to Japan first, I didn't know anything about here. Like it was a long story, but I just found myself here without any background. So of course it was a total different experience. But again, since I had some experience working in international environments before coming here, I believe it helped me a lot because if I assume this is my just imagination, but if I was only pure Turkish habitats or environments, then I assume I would struggle a lot because it is totally different. But since I experienced this in different environments, even though I was working in Turkey, I think this already grew my adaptability. I had a similar experience with Vitaly. Like I worked with a French company. I was also shocked when they just left at 5, and we had a bug, and still like it's 5 o'clock. They just left. Of course, I think it would be different if we had an incident in prod, but still, there's an issue we have to fix. and everyone lives. That would never happen in Turkey. I'm sure they would stay in the office until midnight until they fix the issue. But yeah, so if you see those kind of different experiences, then you are not shocked anymore and you are prepared to cope with these kind of different scenarios, I would say.
Two things that I wanted to share about my experience in Sweden. Exactly as you mentioned, when you work with friends and all these things when leaving totally at 5 o'clock in the evening. And in Sweden, it's even more extreme because here the family is like everything. If you get a call from the kindergarten, then you're off work. No matter if you're a CDO, if you're like CEO and like sitting in the uh, super important meetings. No way you could escape these school conversations. That's the highest priority, and everyone knows about it, and that's okay. And because of it's for everyone, it's in the culture, and everyone is okay with that. So, and it's a completely different story compared to Belarus. There the work is the on the throne, and it's your responsibility to fix all this stuff at home and manage your um, schedule, and maybe even find someone who takes care of your children, or anything home related. And that's why it also affects diversity at work, the rights of underrepresented social groups for work, and so on and so on. So that's also really, really important. And the other thing I wanted to say is I can recall one um, story when I was working at a company, also producing different super heavy hardware tools for heavy industries. And I came there together with a few other colleagues with international backgrounds. It was not only me, but yeah, people from different countries. And we've been working there for a few months, and we noticed that okay, something is wrong. It feels like we can't connect with the other people who were there for several decades working for this company. And I talked to the manager. Maybe we could do something about this. That we've got cultural training. It was for a few weeks. We had several sessions for a few weeks explaining cultural differences, how people are supposed to work in Sweden, what are the communication differences in other different countries, not focusing exactly on our countries where we came from, but in general. And the product dynamics, it completely changed. It completely changed our minds, how we work and how we connect. So I think it's one of the essential things to keep in mind. Then it having people with different cultural backgrounds in the team can make things worse, but it also can accelerate product dynamics if if you use this advantage the right way.
I totally agree. Like it's a richness, right? If you have different backgrounds, profiles, and if you are able to manage these differences, then of course it will make you more mm, capable of managing different situations. But of course, if you are not able to manage these differences, as you told, it might go even worse. But this is a potential for a richness in your workspace, work culture.
This is particularly important.
That's why I think
And
your
sorry, sorry, go ahead, Maria.
yeah, I was just trying to say that yeah, that's why this study is extremely important, because we need to highlight these differences and show people that it's the way to enrich your projects, to make working life better, to highlight that we are all different, but that's only good. That's only for good.
What I wanted to say is that we all tend to agree that it's both important for managers to understand the cultural and historical aspects of certain country and certain age, or not age, but like what's going on now in the country and how it operates with other countries and other cultures, and also for us, the employees, to understand everyone else around us better. Not to think that someone is grumpy just because he's not smiling. Maybe he's just Russian like I am, even though I smile a lot. But anyway, what I want to say is that it's strange that the whole sociological domain of expertise, domain of knowledge, is so huge, and yet we are running researches like you, Mesut, are. Um, sociological and cultural researches, we have to run them because for some strange reason there isn't a good connection between social studies and cultural studies and IT. Maybe there is, maybe I'm not educated just about them, but I have found just 2 books on culture and its effects on software development. I will link them to the podcast. Just 2. I'm not sure why, even though we all know how it affects all of us. Only couple of scientific books are around. What I wanted to ask you, how do you want people to collaborate with you? What is expected of people who want to participate in this research?
Uh, Particularly for this research, right? Uh, I have a link for the contribution or collaboration guide. They can just follow. So there are 2 ways to do this. Maybe just fill in a Google form, or just make a merge request to the GitHub repository. But like, I'm quite flexible. Like, if they reach out to me in any ways, like email or send a message on LinkedIn in any ways, then of course I can add on behalf of them. And not only they don't have to follow the questions that I shared. They were just some examples to share their feedback. But if people have interesting facts or experiences about these differences, then if they share, of course, it will help a lot for us to understand different experiences.
And Mesut, as you had mentioned, I think it is very important that we get a lot of input here, because each country, you need a large enough sample size just to avoid sampling bias for your research, right? I mean, I guess the it's a study about diversity, but the diversity of responses in the study in turn helps the study itself, right? Like, so
Yes.
I think this is why this is an appeal for everybody who's listening to this to take 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't take more time than that to participate in Mesut's survey. He's designed it very elegantly so that it doesn't take too much time to provide inputs. And I mean, what I definitely do along with this podcast is also send it out to my network and invite more participation here.
That would help a lot. Thanks. And of course, if we figure out that there are some experiences on the technical part of testing, that would be really interesting, because so far I didn't have any feedback related to this. It is mostly the communication side or the soft skills side of working style. And I think it is expected, it is normal. But if I find some differences on the technical part, it would be even more interesting, I guess.
But I guess that the technical side is the easiest one, pretty much always. Well, I've heard that in the UK, where I had lived for 4 years, they have a serious problem with COBOL in the banks, inheritance from 1980s. But then again, I could argue that it is not purely a technical issue, but rather a managerial decision which has been made and made and made again and again and again, not to invest into rebuilding it into something more modern. So I would argue that pretty much all the technical issues have certain roots in social or cultural or authority-based issues. Because, for example, if you're a manager who is only there for 3 years, not lifetime employee, but just for 3 years, to gather your money, to gather your bonuses, and quit for some other job, you would not be interested into investing or justifying the investment of so many millions of pounds into rebuilding some old system, an investment which would not give you short-term results, right?
Or if you are a manager who does not listen to your colleagues, who does not looking for any other feedback, just following your opinions, then you might come up with the same situation. But yeah, I agree. I agree. The technical part is the easiest because if you don't know anything, but if you have a good or strong communication with all the colleagues, your teammates, then you will figure out somehow. You will learn. Especially now, there are a lot of AI tools, right? You ask something and you will immediately get the response. So I believe research, especially the technical research, is easier than before. And I agree that is not the biggest bottleneck that we have to solve. If you have some communication problems, then it is way harder to solve.
All right. I mean, I guess we've had a very wide-ranging conversation, which we've all thoroughly enjoyed. We've touched upon how, different geographical different countries have different culture and how this culture affects the work culture and how this work culture in turn informs or influences the testing culture. We've also spoken about your study, and I'm just quickly summarizing as we wrap up this conversation. We also spoke about your study, and here's another appeal to everybody who's listening to this, who have access to this information. Please, please contribute. We know that you have something valuable to share here, and I think we all can benefit the more you contribute here to the study. So this is an appeal that goes out. We will share links on how to do this. And Mesut, any final words, any final ask, or any final message that you want to get out there to the audience before we wrap up?
You summarized it very well. Thanks for that. And again, the purpose of this study is just having some ideas or insights about developing our adaptability and communication skills and the capability to work in international environments or in environments where we have lots of different profiles. So again, if people contribute or they can just read the feedback we collected, I hope it will be beneficial for the whole community, as you said. And thanks for having me today. It was also fun. As you told, we spent a different set of topics, and there is a lot more that we can talk on. But of course, it's a never ending story. So it was too much fun. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for joining us at the BeyondQuality podcast, and I hope we could maybe continue conversation and then meet again after you finalize your study to discuss the findings, and it would be really, really nice. Thank you very much, and good luck in your study.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mesut. If you need help analyzing the data, please shout. I have some sociologist friends who could help design the analysis and synthesis of the results. So keep us updated, okay? Thank you so much.
I will do. Thanks.
And I've stopped recording.